Good evening. Welcome to PMQs here on Sky News, where we'll be analysing and reviewing today's Prime Minister's question time in the House of Commons. Another week, another tricky set of questions about the Home Office for the Prime Minister to answer. Even David Cameron had had enough.
To try and blame previous Conservative Home Secretaries just won't wash. He'll be blaming Sir Robert Peel next.
Well, in a moment, I'll hear the verdicts on those performances from my political pundits this week. They are John Rentoul and Kirsty Walker. Also, learning the lessons of the Education Bill at third reading. MPs will debate that. And the art of blogging. Two practitioners join me to reveal their trade secrets. And talking of blogging, don't forget you can post your comments on PMQs or any other political stories at my online diary. Go to Adam Bolton weblog at www.sky.com/Sky News and click on the link. First, the highlights of today's Prime Minister's questions in Parliament.
The new Home Secretary has said that the Immigration and Nationality Directorate, after 9 years of a Labour government, is inadequate, dysfunctional and not fit for purpose. More than 2 years ago, in February 2004, the Prime Minister said that the Immigration and Nationality Directorate is, and I quote, a transformed part of the Home Office. Does he now agree that that judgment was completely wrong?
We have doubled the number of people removed who are failed asylum seekers, and as opposed to the previous government, we now have a situation where we actually know the numbers of people we need to deport and can deport them.
The Prime Minister said it was a transformed part of the Home Office. How has it done it? By changing the law, by innovating, by setting targets, by leadership, by focusing on results. The Home Secretary, who's trying to help the Prime Minister in his hour of need, said this. He said it is inadequate in terms of its information technology, leadership, management systems and processes. How can those two possibly wash?
The system that we inherited in 1997 was a system that took ages to decide asylum claims, where the numbers of asylum seekers rose and where people were not removed who were failed asylum seekers. It is a fact that the number of asylum claims is now down. It is a fact that the number of removals has doubled, and it is a fact that the claims are now decided, 80% of them, in 2 months. It is also, however, the case that much more needs to be done.
In the last week, we've learnt that 85 foreign criminals who've committed serious crimes are still at large, 700 people have escaped from open prisons last year, and illegal immigrants are allowed to clean the office of the department that's meant to remove them. That is just a typical week in Labour's Home Office. Now, while all the other ministers are being moved, there is one minister who's held the same job for 9 years and who said law and order was his priority. When is the Prime Minister going to take personal responsibility for this shambles?
Very happy to take personal responsibility. But let me just remind them that according to the British Crime Survey, overall crime is down in our country, not up. We have put in place the antisocial behaviour legislation, also measures that he failed to support in this House. We've also actually toughened sentences, which is why there are more people in prison and they're serving longer prison sentences. He voted against the measures that allowed us to do that. And in addition to that, we have an extra 14,000 police officers, and he voted against the investment for those police officers. So with the greatest respect, again, although he talks in general about how much he cares about crime, in particular, he ends up voting against the measures necessary to deal with it.
Mingus Campbell. But 3 weeks ago, the Prime Minister told me that the Home Office was fit for purpose. But yesterday, the Home Secretary said that it wasn't. Which is it?
I don't agree with the right honourable gentleman for the reasons that I've just been explaining to the Leader of the Opposition. The fact of the matter is there are huge challenges in the Immigration and Nationality Department because of the changing nature of migration. And if we want to deal with these issues, we have to take measures that allow us to deal with them. Now, I was saying a moment or two ago that the Conservative Party had voted against many of the measures necessary to strengthen the law on immigration, on asylum and on crime. He at least has been thoroughly consistent. He's voted against every measure necessary.
David Cameron.
Mr. Speaker, the Education Bill before us today will give greater independence to schools, it'll raise standards and it'll give parents more choice. The bill will pass without being wrecked because we have given it our backing. The Prime Minister has been prepared to drop tribal politics and accept Conservative support in the interests of parents and pupils. Does the Prime Minister think the Chancellor will take the same approach?
Yes, I'm going to take every opportunity. He did ask me about the Chancellor. I'd like to talk about it. As a result of the Chancellor's economic record, interest rates are half what they were, unemployment is down, employment is up, and as a result of that, we have been able to invest in schools, in our pupils, in higher education, and I can tell them that investment, along with the reform, will continue.
Well, if the Chancellor's doing such a good job, why doesn't he let him take over?
He may want to forget this, but actually we had a general election a year ago. We won, they lost.
Joining me now are Kirsty Walker of the Daily Mail and John Rentoul of The Independent on Sunday, also, of course, a biographer of the Prime Minister. And Kirsty, how did you score those performances by the three great men?
I've got Tony Blair at 4. No, that's wrong, actually. I've got David Cameron at 4. I've got Tony Blair at 2. And poor old Ming, I'm afraid I've just given him a 1.
And why was that? You still weren't impressed by
Yeah,
him?
I'm not very impressed at all. No, I'm most worried about this Freddie the Frog-style croak that he's developed, which is a sign of nerves, I have to say. Ian Duncan Smith, he developed one, and it is a sign that they're really unsettled. And his second question was almost identical to one of David Cameron's, and for a QC and a leading lawyer, I think he should be able to think on his feet a bit better.
All right, John Rentoul, how about you? What do you give Blair?
I gave him a 1. I'm a harsh marker, I'm afraid, Adam. I thought his performance was miserable today. I thought Cameron was very, very good, although fundamentally unserious. I mean, he didn't really have any serious questions to ask.
Does he need to?
And
I mean, he's the opposition, after all.
No, well, yeah, but he does need to, actually. He does need to give people a reason to vote Conservative. I mean, obviously, yes, the Home Office is...
So 3 for Cameron and for Campbell?
And Campbell, I give him 2 because I know it was the same question as Cameron, but he did ask it in quite a sharper way than
I mean, I have to say,
did.
I thought it was a better question than you did, perhaps, Kirsty, because what he was saying was, this is still a pertinent question. Is it fit for purpose? And also, I wasn't such a Burke for asking this 2 weeks ago, where they said, is it fit for purpose? Because after all, he's got the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary disagreeing with each other.
I mean, I suppose we have to be fair to him. He has ditched the notes, which is a definite step in the right direction. So we haven't got so much of the shaky hand business. I'm maybe being a little bit harsh, but he's still nowhere in the same league as the other two, really isn't.
I mean, I have to say, it simply doesn't end, because since question time, John Reid, the Home Secretary, following his appearance yesterday, is now furious. He told the MPs that 4 murderers, as well as 23 other most serious offenders, were in detention. But now he's had to say 1 murderer, a rapist and a child sex offender had actually already been released on bail by the Asylum and Immigration Tribunal. I mean...
Well,
you couldn't. I mean, I know Richard Littlejohn says it, but you really couldn't make this up, could you?
Well, it is actually quite complicated, Adam, though, isn't it? I mean, and it's getting more complicated all the time. And actually, I think fair-minded people are beginning to wonder, it's all very well for a bit of sport in PMQs, but what would the Conservatives actually do differently? I mean, this isn't. David Cameron doesn't have any answers. He just got jokes about Sir Robert Peel.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a different approach to running the Home Office.
But the problem, isn't it, Kirsty, as David Cameron was saying, that Tony Blair's been there for 9 years going on about being tough on crime?
Well, exactly. And I was about to say to John, I think he actually made a very serious point. He's had 8 years in power. This is a man who, as you quite rightly pointing out, said, I'm going to be tough on crime and tough on the causes of crime. 8 years down the line, and I mean, today, John Reid, it's just amazing. The Select Committee yesterday, you've got Home Secretary dismissing his entire department and saying it's disastrous, it's not fit for purpose, I'm going to have to sack everybody. Some of these civil servants' heads are going to roll. And if someone's got to take responsibility for this,
senior civil servant's been suspended. But
well, yeah, I mean, Tony Blair has been tough on crime, to be fair, and crime is going down. But of course,
well, that was his argument today, and you gave him 1 for it.
Well, yes, because he's a bit like a man sort of trying to stuff potatoes into a wet paper bag. He thought he'd got them all in there, and then they all started spreading out the bottom because something else goes wrong. You get asylum under control, then you realise that the police aren't arresting illegals because they'll claim asylum.
Very quickly, I just want to get your views. The affair of Mrs. Blair and signing the copy of the Hutton report, damaging?
Yeah, massively damaging. I mean, it was just such a... I can't imagine what went through her, or actually, for that matter, Alistair Campbell's head when they thought, you know, this was it was being hawked as a sort of novelty item at an auction to raise Labour Party funds. And they're quite... I mean, we actually need an apology, really, now from the Prime Minister.
No, we do not need an apology. I mean, yeah, of course, it is massively damaging, but only because the whole country's gone stark staring mad about this affair and thinks that the Hutton report was actually a whitewash and, you know, the government behaved terribly towards David Kelly, who was actually honour bound, I think, to come forward
and committed suicide. Should the reports on his death be sold at charity auctions for the
No,
Labour?
of course they shouldn't. It was a tasteless and stupid thing
Let
to do.
alone signed by the Prime Minister's wife.
Yeah, I know, but which is why, you know, Tony Blair just had to put his hands up to it.
All right, then. Thank you both very much indeed, John Rentoul and Kirsty Walker. And as far as the aggregates are concerned, not a good week for Mr Blair. 3 for him. A runaway win, 7 for David Cameron, and a better week for Min Campbell. He got 3. Thank you again. And coming up, top marks or black marks for the Education Bill. MPs join me to give their assessment.
The news at 12 is going to be Sky News with a twist.
Welcome back to Lunchtime Live. Our top story here on Lunchtime Live this afternoon.
Obviously, we're going to be covering the major news stories of the day.
Live now to our crime correspondent, Martin Brunt.
But in addition to that, we're going to be focusing on human interest stories.
A remarkable story of overcoming the odds.
So if there's something that's important to you,
everything's just going along pretty much perfectly.
we'll be covering it.
Lunchtime Live with Kay Burley. Every weekday from 12 till 2.
And at More Than, we also give you 12 months car insurance for the price of 11. Phone 0800 878 787 or visit us online.
Bev! Kev!
Kev! Bev!
Oh, I've always liked this model, Kev. Me too, Kev. MOT, Kev. 6 months, Kev. You couldn't come down on the price, Kev. I wish I could, Kev.
Why are you selling it, Bev? We just fancy something a bit whizzier, Bev.
With an AA car loan, the typical rate is just 6.2% APR, so you might be surprised how much you can afford.
Nice car.
Oh, thanks. We've always wanted one of these.
To get more car for your money, call 0800 374 999 or go online. Call now and you could also get a free 6-month AA car warranty.
And I will follow you, darling, if you ask me to. And I will follow you, darling, if you ask me to.
Indigo Satellite Navigation. Get there.
The new 7-seat Ford S-Max.
Well, be wondering how he came to squander his majority and to have to rely on Tory votes again to get his way. These are the numbers at the third reading of the bill: 422 4 ayes and just 98 against, noes. 324 government majority, but 46 Labour MPs rebelled. Yesterday, 69 rebelled on an amendment to the bill. So is rebellion infectious, and where are our schools heading under New Labour? With me now are the Labour MP David Chater, Nick Gibb for the Conservatives and Stephen Williams for the Liberal Democrats. Nick Gibb, I've got to ask you first of all, you could have brought down the Blair government tonight and you didn't.
Well, what would have been the point of defeating a bill that we think will improve the quality of education? It gives more autonomy for schools. It's like an independent school, but within the state sector and free for people that go there. Why would we want to defeat such a bill? We're serious about education reform in the Conservative Party, and when the government does the right thing, we will support them.
Do you think they did the right thing from the vantage point of the Liberal Democrats?
No, I don't. I think they missed an opportunity to defeat the government, and I think they did it for naked political opportunism of embarrassing the Prime Minister rather than being a realistic opposition party.
But didn't they make the point they wanted to make about education, which is that they rather welcome these reforms, although they would have gone further?
Well, I listened to the debate this afternoon and I followed it right the way back to last autumn. I think the Conservative Party is actually all over the place on many aspects of this bill, particularly on grammar schools, where David Cameron's against. Yet today they voted against a referendum for parents. Some Tory MPs are vociferously for grammar schools. Some say they want to end selection. They're a mixed bag.
David Chater, you voted for the third reading tonight, but you had previously rebelled. If you'd had your druthers, you'd just rather this bill had never come up at all, would you?
No, I don't think that's the case. I think we've got to get away from the politics of it and focus on the issues. What's significant is there's a broad base of consensus now about the direction of education policy. What we've agreed is that there needs to be a little bit more autonomy for schools, but there has to be a framework of local authority strategic powers. And there's got to be a framework of fair admissions as well. So I think we've got broadly the balance right, though I rebelled on 3 amendments, I think, because I think there are things that need improving. But
I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, how different do you think the bill that's gone through tonight is from what Ruth Kelly, who was then the Education Secretary, and Tony Blair proposed?
Well, I think the issue is the difference between the bill and the white paper. And the bill is significantly different from the white paper. We've made huge progress.
Where? What in particular?
Well, in terms of the whole question of local authorities' powers to promote new community schools, in terms of the tightening of the school admissions, the fact that the admissions code is now mandatory. There are a number of areas like this, and I think we've got the framework right now. I think we've got the right balance between the managerial autonomy for school over day-to-day matters, but the appropriate framework within the local authority and an admissions policy that's firm and fair. Now, if you can get that, it really doesn't matter who votes for it, and we've got a broad base of consensus.
I mean, Steve Williams, I would have thought that the idea of autonomous schools liberated perhaps from local authority control is a sort of classic Liberal idea, really.
It is. It's an idea that my party first thought of way back in the 1980s.
Yeah,
local management of a school
was
one of our ideas. We think this bill was actually a missed opportunity. The real sort of choice here should have been for pupils to have more choice over their curriculum, to have more collaboration in between schools. We've got this idea of a neighbourhood schools trust, where different schools and colleges can combine to maximise choice for pupils. What this bill does, I'm afraid, is give more of the choice to schools to select their students rather than students to select what they want to do within schools.
But in the end, isn't that what independence is about?
Yes, it is to some extent, but it has to be fair, and all the evidence shows that where schools have more control over their admissions, they will select the most able pupils in order to get the best results.
Nick Gibb, what are you sorry that's been lost, if you like, in this bill from what was originally proposed in the white paper?
I think it's a pity we didn't keep to the original vision of the Prime Minister in the white paper. We think it's a pity that they're now allowing local authorities to propose community schools. You know, the overwhelming majority of schools are already community schools. 63% are community schools. If you want to have a diverse array of schools, then there's no point in creating more of the same type we already have. So there's a great pity that they did that. And I think the admissions code has become very prescriptive, and I think that's a shame they did that. We want, all the way through the committee stage and the third reading and the report stage, we tried to table amendments that put the bill back to the original vision of the Prime Minister and the Secretary of State for Education at the time, but alas, we weren't successful.
David Chater, has it been worth the fighting and the agony which has caused the Labour Party? Because in the end, when you get a rebellion of 69, which I think is the biggest since 1977 by some counts, according to Philip Cowley, again, the Prime Minister's authority has been damaged, hasn't it?
No, I don't think it has, actually. I think the Prime Minister's authority has been strengthened because what we've seen during the course of the bill is a very open debate about serious issues of education policy. This debate has gone right across party lines. There have been issues on which we have agreed with the Tories. There's been issues on which we have agreed with the Liberal Democrats. The issues have been explored in great detail. And actually, I think this is Parliament working at its best, both in the committee and on the floor of the House of Commons.
And what would your advice be to the Prime Minister if he's considering further public service reforms?
Well, I think there is an issue about the way the policy was presented. I think we had this problem with the higher education bill 2 years ago, the tuition fees bill. We've had it again with the education white paper. And I just think that when we are promoting a continuous programme of reform, and I'm in favour of continuous reform and continuous improvement, you've got to win the arguments first before you launch the policy. And I think that's the real issue that we've all got to learn from.
Thank you all very much. We must leave it there. Keep a diary and it will keep you. Keep a diary online and everyone can keep reading your not-so-private thoughts around the clock for nothing. Online diaries, better known now as weblogs or blogs, have become required reading at Westminster for gossip, innuendo and the occasional bit of useful information. Well, with me now are two of Westminster's finest bloggers, the Conservative commentator Ian Dale and Clive Soley, former Labour MP, now, of course, in the House of Lords. And Ian Dale, I have to say, not only are you now in the blogosphere to be read electronically, you've actually got a book out of it. I mean, you're a publisher's dream. You've got all these people online contributing for nothing.
Well, that's right. It's the first book ever written by bloggers, the Little Red Book of New Labour Sleaze. And from the moment someone had the idea, which it was originally Guido Fawkes, who runs a blog at orderorder.com, he had the idea, emailed me on the 30th of April. 3 weeks later, there's a book written entirely by bloggers.
Clive Soley, you've actually got involved in the blogging business. How powerful a new medium do you think it is?
I still think we're at the early days of it, but I do think it will become very important. And the real problem for politicians is how do you engage with this much wider audience out there who are eager to engage in many cases in a way that doesn't simply overwhelm you in terms of time, but it's a very good medium. It is like a meeting room without walls, and in that sense it brings back a bit of the old street meetings you used to have in politics years ago.
I mean, you've been a constituency MP. Is it really any different from the sort of people who came to your surgeries, the sort of people who wrote your letters?
Oh, no, radically different, yes, because the surgeries tend to be people with specific problems. People who wrote letters, yeah, it's a bit more similar to that, I suppose. What you tend to get is the issues of the day. And, of course, a lot depends on what you put on it. I've sort of moved from one type of blog to another, in a sense. I started putting on general comments. Now I tend to put on much more just what I've said or done in the House of Lords, because I think that's more specific. The problem I had before is, as a constituency MP, you knew that most of the people you were responding to were not your constituents. Only a small percentage were your constituents. And you tended to get bogged down at times into particular issues which some people felt very, very strongly about.
Ian, it really is shooting from the hip. That's what struck me. In posting a comment, once it's out there, you can't really take it back. And, I mean, the people who respond are some of the rudest people, I have to say, I've encountered, at least on my blog site. Perhaps that's
that may reflect on you, Adam, I don't know. It's true, it is very instantaneous, and therefore it's dangerous, because if you suddenly have a rush of blood and you suddenly think of something you want to have a rant about, you type it, 10 minutes later you might think, I've gone a bit far then. But it's on the internet, and you can delete it, but somewhere out there'll be a technical geek who can find it again. Yeah. So for a politician, it's quite dangerous territory. And I mean, there have been things, I'm sure, in the past that I've written online that in the future may come back to haunt.
No, I mean, we've actually posted some of the comments that we've had on my blog today. Mark in Chiswick's been saying of Guido's blog that it's one of the most widely read at Westminster. These blogs just spread gossip and innuendo and encourage even deeper cynicism about politics. Check out www.bloggersforlabour.org for a little bit of balance. Paul from Linford in Derbyshire reacts to the comment on my blog about the political leanings of blogs. There are left of centre blogs, Adam, but they tend to be very anti-Blairite, e.g. New Labour Unplugged and the ironically titled Backing Blair. I don't think a pro-Blair blog would get many readers at the moment. And just to show how non-partisan the blogosphere is, Alan Connor from BBC Westminster writes, the left and right tags mean less as the world of weblogs develops, with Blair especially Iraq forging alliances both pro and anti-war, which elide those distinctions. Strikes me, though, at the moment, you on the right are a bit better organised than those on the left, Ian.
I think that's true, but it's probably because the Conservatives are in opposition, so we've got a lot more to rant about, if you like. And it's true, there are very, very few Labour blogs. There's one Birmingham councillor who's quite well known, but I can't really think of any others. Quite a few Lib Dem ones too. OK, well, you can see references to a lot of those blog sites on my blog site. In the meantime, it's time for us to blog off. And next week, there's a parliamentary recess, so we'll be back in a fortnight with a full review of Prime Minister's questions. Coming up next, News at 10 with all the national and international news.
You select the finest sand, pat it down gently, a few nicely weighted taps, and an expert lift-off. But there's always some clever clogs who's gone one better.
I'm gonna make some people vom, spill their guts and cry to mom. Ain't that pretty? I'm gonna give them diarrhea, 5 times longer.
5 times longer? Maybe later. 5 times later. New Domestos 5X. Sticks around 5 times longer. Millions more germs will die.
What is that stuff? It's cholesterol.
Captain, there's something coming from the rear.
It's breaking up.
The plant sterols in Flora Proactive help to actively remove cholesterol.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are getting ready to land.
Within the miles
Please return to your seat and make sure your carry-on bags
that lie between us, away with the sea.
Air France.
Look at that beauty. Is she smooth? Sexual like a lady. For the man on the move, man on a mission, eh? With a suitcase. You know, a man with a contact. We're in. Hell, no. That's not it. Just, hands free. Hello! You bad!
No bleeping gadgets, no nonsense. John Smith's.
As the clock turns, National Geographic continues to grow, on a mission to engage, inform and challenge perceptions. A1, the channel that never stops exploring. It takes you to the boundaries and to the heart of the action. National Geographic HD, a purely dedicated high-definition channel. Superior sound with amazing picture quality. Experience the real world redefined. As the clock turns, National Geographic continues to grow.
Coming up in Sky News at 10, Cherie Blair caught up in a row over Labour fundraising.
Mountain dilemma. The climber forced to leave this man to die on Everest.
And we'll take a first look at the big stories making the morning's front pages.
First, though, here's Francis with the weather.
Frost. As seen by Qatar Airways passengers, your 5-star airline.
Midday tomorrow. How do we get to this level? You see the rain that's crossing here now. There's more on the way in the Atlantic for Friday. So it's very unsettled for the northern latitudes of Europe. You can see the problem we have in Britain and Ireland, the rain. These are the radar echoes. Look at this massive rain. It's so wet now over Wales and England, moving away to Holland and Belgium through the night. So it looks like we'll start the day clear and fine in Scotland, a bit cold. And it looks like there'll be a legacy of grey weather across southern counties to begin with. But then the sun will burst through, very nice. Temperatures in the sun zooming to 20, but shade temperatures 15 or 16. Dry, that's the thing. At long last, we've got a dry-ish day, although there'll be more rain on Friday. Further south, you can see the clear through Iberia. There's a lot of wind, though, and cloud coming into the southeast of Spain, and be rain there on Friday.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Tonight on Sky News at 10, MPs apologise for a fundraising gaffe. It involved the Prime Minister's wife and a signed copy of the Hutton Report.
Also tonight, the 2 divorce rulings that could affect thousands of women.
Tony Blair's school reforms survive another backbench revolt, but it's thanks to the Tories.
Cutting knife crime, teenagers the target of a national amnesty.
Airport inferno. Kurdish militants say they were behind a blaze in Turkey.
And Owen will captain the England B team in his first footballing start for almost 5 months.
Live from the Sky News Centre, this is Sky News at 10 with Chris Roberts and Gillian Joseph.
Good evening, welcome to Sky News at 10. 2 Labour MPs have tonight apologised over a fundraising stunt involving the Prime Minister's wife, which appears to have backfired on the party.
A copy of the Hutton Report into the suicide of the government scientist David Kelly was autographed by Cherie Blair and auctioned off to raise cash. The Tories say it was in bad taste and crassly insensitive.
At the centre of a new political storm, Cherie Blair is under pressure to apologise after being accused of appalling bad taste and helping the Labour Party cash in on the suicide of government scientist Dr. David Kelly. The Prime Minister's wife signed a copy of the Hutton Report into Dr. Kelly's death to raise money for the party.
It was at this upmarket club in the heart of London's Mayfair that a copy of the Hutton Report, signed by Cherie Blair, was auctioned to raise money for Labour Party funds. It fetched £400. The event was organised by a Blairite minister, James Purnell. The auctioneer was another Blairite MP, Chris Bryant. Both have now apologised.
We sincerely regret any offence caused, they said. This was a private event. We have not received any money, and we would not accept any. MPs have already condemned the auction as insensitive, and the Prime Minister was challenged about it in the Commons.
Given that the Hutton Report was an inquiry about the death of a public servant, should copies signed by celebrities be auctioned to raise funds for a political party?
Again, if I just say to the honourable gentleman that I do not believe that any offence to anyone was intended.
Tom Hardis.
Mr Blair's former spin doctor Alistair Campbell also signed a copy